welcome to our Fireside chat. My name's Scott. We've already met, but my name's Scott, and I do two things. I've got a business called The Boom and a business called ThinkSprint, and at the heart of everything I do is all about how do you inspire creativity, either internally from an existing organisation, or how do you get the best talent? That's The Boom. Yeah. How do you get the best talent outside of your organisation to bring it into your organisation? And that's the ThinkSprint part of my business. But the heart of everything is I'm just really passionate about building great teams and great ideas and helping businesses move forward.
All right, cool, very cool. I do sort of a similar thing. I'm a creative director at a company called MediaMonks, a digital production agency with offices all around the world. Started out as a really small team in Amsterdam with just a few guys in the basement. And the interesting bit is that now we're 15 years further, most of those guys are still there in an industry where everybody switches jobs every 2 years.
Yeah, of course.
And throughout the years, I've been put in charge of the culture club, if you will, to maintain our precious culture while we're expanding to countries to like Dubai and Shanghai and Sweden and stuff like that.
Wow.
And how do we keep our identity, and how do we keep our people happy, basically happy, creative, and productive?
Because I guess that's one of the hardest things, right? When you start small and then expand out, is keep identifying what the culture is.
Yeah.
Because quite often it's the founders and the initial people, and they've created a culture, and they've not necessarily. I don't like the word codified, but it's like you know what it is deep down. But you can't always tell everyone what it is, and when you hire people in, you just go, they're a good fit or they're not. So how do you make sure that when you go out to the bigger markets, how do you make sure that you keep that culture alive?
It starts with a little bit of self-examination. Like you said, it's really hard to put your finger on that is who we are, but it's possible. It's possible. And then you need to look at how much of these culture traits are vital to our success, which are productive, which are not, which are vital to people's happiness in the company, and which are not, and which work in other territories. Yeah. Like we go to Austria each year and ski and drink ourselves into oblivion, but that doesn't work for Dubai.
Yeah, of course.
So in a way, we have to remain ourselves, but still adapt to where we are.
So I often found when I was in brands, some of the brands I've worked with, like look at Diesel and Saatchi's and people like that, I often found when there was a really good rallying call, it was effectively the why of the organisation. So at Saatchi's we always talked about nothing is impossible. Yeah. So as you walk through the door every single morning, you saw those words emblazoned, on the entrance. Yeah. And you knew that when you went in, you could do anything that was, anything you wanted to do within reason. Yeah. And I always found that kind of stuff inspiring. And when I was at Diesel, the last place I worked, our whole philosophy, we had two things. We had only the brave, but also for successful living. And Renzo, who's the owner of Diesel, his whole thing is about how do I empower people to be the best they can be every single day.
So that doesn't just translate out as the brand message, but it also works internally.
Exactly. And I think that's interesting because when those things work really well, I remember when we did like the Be Stupid campaign, we often talked about that campaign was as much about talking to the consumer about this is what Diesel is about, as it was in reigniting everybody in the business to go, this is what Renzo was, this is Renzo's story, and this is why you're all here. Yeah. And those kind of stories, it's like storytelling in a business, the myths and the legends and all that sort of stuff that build up over the years. How do you do that at MediaMonks? Have you got any great stories that you could tell us from that kind of like keep that creativity alive?
Safe for the camera? No. We tend to we come from a real sort of builder's background as a production agency, and that means that there's a lot of sort of no bullshit. Hard work is the greatest thing there is. Yeah. Almost a Spartanesque attitude, if you will, to work. Like to work yourself, to work so hard on a project and then see it launch and then take all the glory. That's the greatest thing there is. And a few years after we started, we made a conscious decision. From a certain point, we said to ourselves, from now on, we're going to make award-winning work. And much more than it being reliant on skills or time or hiring, it was most reliant on the decision and the message to everybody that from now on we're making award-winning work. Yeah. And that switch literally immediately worked. Wow. And then the awards started rolling in, people started making more creatively interesting work, and suddenly we are a creative digital production agency.
Right.
and we collaborate with the agency creatives on their idea. We're no longer just the builders. We work with them to create the whole concept.
Yeah.
And that sort of decisiveness of like, now we're going to do this, that's sort of a clear leadership signal that in hindsight sounds super cocky and super obvious. Like, you can't just decide to make award-winning work. Yeah. Yes, you can. You can just decide to make award-winning work and inspire people to do better than they did before.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I often talk about in leadership and stuff. I coach leaders and CEOs and businesses on like what the environment needs to be for creativity to flourish.
Yeah.
And I often talk about this idea of positive disruption. And the idea of positive disruption is that if you can successfully like look at what the status quo, what everyone else is doing, and it sounds a bit obvious, but you can look at that and go, right, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to find interesting ways to create a way that we can positively disrupt everybody in the organisation all the time, so they don't just sit on the laurels. They're always looking at things in a different way. And I use a whole load of techniques that so CREATE is actually an acronym. So when I was here 2 years ago, I shared that with everybody about some of the key leadership behaviours, and one of them is something we absolutely live on in ThinkSprint, which is radical collaboration.
Yeah.
There's a whole series of other ones as well. Another one is extreme empowerment. So all these things where, as a leader, you go, right, okay, we're now going to win awards, and that's a positive disruption because everyone's like, oh, really? Can we do that? Is that something we really? We can. And all of a sudden, when you start to give people that visualization of what success looks like, they know exactly what to go and do, and you just back it up with great behaviours. You empower people to say, right, you're going to go and produce award-winning work. Yeah. And they go, but I can't do that. And yes, you can. Here's what I'm expecting you to do. Here's how I'm going to get you to there. Yeah. Now go and do it. And they go and do it. And it's incredible when you can see leadership like that in an organisation.
Definitely.
And sadly, from my experience, there's not a great deal of that. The businesses that don't do that really, really suffer, even more so now. Yeah. Because they're just kind of like part of the status quo.
Yeah, they're burning hours. Yeah. It's for instance, at MediaMonks we don't have any hour registration. We don't register hours.
Oh, you mean like timesheets?
Yeah, there's no timesheets. No timesheets, no timetables. Of course, we keep track on if projects are going well and how to spread people on the right projects. But nobody will come to your desk and give you a talking to because you spent too long on a project, which is just
or not long enough.
Which is ridiculous if you ask me. It's about ambitions, not about hours.
Yes.
And if you take that pressure away from people and just say, listen, I just want you to do the best thing you can do with this assignment in the time you have. Yeah. And take away the pressure of all this other bureaucratic stuff around it. And just let them do their work. Just let them do what they're good at. Yeah. And so it's about inspiring, I feel, but it's also about facilitating.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I'm not going to let you get away with that easily because you make it sound really, really easy. And I know from experience it's not.
Nope.
And everyone out there might be going, well, that's just me. I'm just going to go into my office tomorrow. Yeah. Right, guys, we're going to win awards. So what were the kind of challenges that you faced when you said to everybody, right, this is the culture?
The thing is, all the practical challenges have sort of sunken away. All the practical challenges in hindsight don't matter. The biggest thing is a mentality thing.
Yeah.
People will need that winner's mentality. They need to want to do it. And that's also the easiest way to root out if people are there for the long term or short term. If you give an opportunity like that and they don't excel and don't jump at it, even with all the positive feedback, then you know who you're working with. Yeah. So all the practical stuff, I'm sure there was adjustments that we had to make, but I've already forgotten. The mentality is the most important thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Like whenever whenever somebody says like, I would really, really love to do a great project, I'm a strong believer in you get the work you deserve.
Yeah.
If you put out great, phenomenal, surprising work on an unexpected angle, the next thing would be bigger and better. And people have to take responsibility over their own career in that sense.
You're absolutely right. A lot of the time, I used to find when people come and say, I want more responsibility, I want more projects, I want more this. Yeah. I was a bit like, well, if you really wanted it, you'd be doing it. You wouldn't be asking me, you'd just be doing it.
Yeah.
But that's about empowering, right? It's like you can do whatever you want, guys. Just go and do it. If you want to take more responsibility, take it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And I think that's always an interesting challenge in an organisation, how you manage the people. So when you make a big cultural shift like that, it's like there are some people in the business who go, yeah, thank God they've told me that. That's exactly what I want to do. Yeah. But there are some people who go, well, I'm not comfortable with that, and the hard bit is always like managing those people in the nicest possible way to see that this business might not be the right business for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it all comes down to a balance of getting the right people, cultivating the right people, getting them young and hungry and raising them up to greatness, and be decisive as a leader.
I think that's a really interesting point. Yes, be decisive, but also lead your people in the way that you want them to do everything as well. Yeah. And I think it's very easy. There's loads of businesses I find out there that go, yeah, we're really creative. We've got this great creative culture, and we've got bean bags, and we've got table tennis tables, and we have free beer on a Friday. Yeah. And it creates this kind of like aura and buzz. But when you dig a little bit beneath the surface, all that is sometimes all that surface stuff, and there's actually not a culture there at all. Mm-hmm. Or if there is a culture, the leaders aren't leading the organisation in the same way they expect their people to lead. So I always find that whenever I go into an organisation, I'm always like, are the leaders leading this culture and being the people that they should be as well? There's all sorts of great stories. I was talking to somebody there, I can't remember which brand it was now, but they were saying that their CMO was, the other day, they saw the CMO or the CEO, and he or she was serving drinks behind a bar, or serving, they all have to do, as when I was at Diesel, we had to go and work in a store. And you kind of wanted to do it. It wasn't like, oh God, I've got to go. You want to go into the store because you want to meet the customers, you want to see what your store staff are doing, you want to see who's buying what products, you want to get really close to stuff. And that's part for me of absolutely the creative process and the creative culture, is really getting close to what's going on and to your people and leading them the way that you want them to perform and lead. Yeah.
Like a full immersion.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, fully immerse yourself as a leader in the process of the people. Yeah.
So, 2 minutes. And go again. So one of the things that really interests me is, I do a lot of work, and you're in the creative industries, and kind of we both are in an interesting way. But some of the people that I've been speaking to lately, both in brands and in advertising agencies, and they're saying we're really worried about talent. We're really worried that a lot of talent doesn't want to come to us anymore. Talent wants to go off and start their own business. They want to go and work for a Google or an Uber, or they want to go for businesses that are growing massively, and they don't want to go and work for companies that have stuffy processes and legacy stuff. And all they do is they want a 2% growth all the time. So, A, what's your thought on that, and B, what kind of advice do you think you might give to businesses who are sort of seeing that, because it's kind of a bit of a burning platform, it's happening, and I think a lot of businesses are going, sorry, it won't happen to us, but there'll be a time in 5 years' time when all of a sudden that talent just won't be there.
Yeah. I think it almost comes down to doing exciting work. Like, people would want to go to startups because they think it's more exciting. So it says more about how, let's rephrase that. They want to go to these startups because they think it's more exciting. But that says more about their perception of the startup and the perception of the other alternative, the other company, than it actually does what you're offering. Because in a way, like for instance, we have a lot of guys that come from the gaming industry. They've worked on AAA titles, on big games. And even though they've enjoyed it and they feel proud to have touched such big titles, they feel much more at home at MediaMonks because we do so many more projects at the same time span. Where somewhere else they could spend 3 years of their life on one thing. Here they touch a new project every month, and that whole sort of platter of different types of work and different types of projects is far more enjoyable to them than just sticking to one thing for 3 years. And I think that's also sort of the strength of working in production, such as MediaMonks, is to offer people the chance to touch all these great brands, to work for this brand, work for that brand. We have that freedom because we work for the agencies. So for one day you could be working for a soft drink, and the other day you could be working for your favorite shoe brand. It's all possible. And I think that is, as long as those exciting jobs are there, the talent will flock to that. And of course, create a good culture. Like, to come back to your point about do the founders or do the CEOs really, are they part of the culture? Do they lead by example? At the end of my talk, I showed one of our winter sports videos. We go to Austria each year, get completely wrecked. in that video, in that crowd, you see our founders getting splashed with beer and, you know,
Brilliant.
even if they're hesitant, they'll be pulled into it and they're part of it.
Yeah.
And as long as they lead that way, I think we'll be fine.
Brilliant.